Hello internet users, and welcome back to another video. Once again, I'm going to be taking a Pokemon save file and turning it into an incredibly infuriating experience. In previous episodes, I've gone over the many ways that the player can get stuck in the various towns throughout Hoenn's Ocean. One question I've always gotten though, is if it's possible to softlock yourself in the middle of the ocean itself. Of course, this is ordinarily impossible. If you're already on the water, then you must have a Pokemon that knows Surf with you. This means that if you put yourself on a little island somewhere, you'll always be capable of just jumping back on it and going somewhere else. The reason all of the previous setups worked is because the towns have a Pokemon Center which you can be forced to warp to without any HM Pokemon left in your party. But today, I want to show you all just how close you can get to this potential ocean softlock. Without using even a single tile of land, we're going to put this save file into a truly nightmarish situation. Before I can go over the setup though, I first need to explain a few things for context. You see, this episode is going to require me to make use of some very obscure oversights and features. To start, it needs to be said that this lock will only be possible to do on Pokemon Emerald version. Why is this the case? Well, this is because of the unique way that this version allows the player to capture Groudon and Kyogre. If you're unfamiliar, Pokemon Emerald makes several story changes from Ruby and Sapphire. Instead of just one or the other, both legendary Pokemon become involved with the main plot, and instead of capturing them in the Cave of Origin, the two of them can be found sort of wandering across Hoenn in the postgame. Once the Elite Four is defeated, if you return to the Weather Institute, the man on the second floor will talk to you about certain areas in the game experiencing harsh rain or intense sunlight. If you're fast enough and go to the area he specifies, you can find that a hidden cave or dive spot has appeared, leading to one of the legendary Pokemon. But if you aren't fast enough, the Pokemon will move on and appear somewhere else instead. This was a very unique mechanic that was only ever used in Pokemon Emerald. It is within this feature, though, that a small oversight allows for us to explore a potential softlock. As you may have guessed, since this video is about trapping ourselves in the ocean, we'll need to focus on Kyogre's wandering cave instead of Groudon's. Kyogre has the potential to appear on one of the 4 routes in the ocean. In order for my setup to work though, it's incredibly important that it shows up specifically on Route 129. Once we know that it's there, we need to hurry to the route, where we can see that a new dive spot has appeared here in the ocean. Now once we're underwater, we'll arrive at this special underwater map that leads to Kyogre's cave. Because this map is meant to only be temporarily accessible, it's very simple with just a door leading to Kyogre. As most of you should know, when you're underwater in these games, you're only allowed to resurface on the bright tiles you see here. The button is disabled on all other tiles, in order to prevent you from resurfacing in an awkward spot in the ocean above. However, it is within this tiny map that a small oversight can cause a disastrous problem. You see, other than the bright spot, there is actually one single tile where you can activate the resurface command, and that tile is the door. This might confuse you, as the door tiles in Pokemon will instantly load you into the next map as soon as you walk into them. However, there is a very small and precise window where you can hit the B button before the game starts loading the next room. The game will then bring up the prompt asking if you want to go back above the water. The devs clearly never expected this window of timing to be possible, so the door tile was never made to stop you from resurfacing. It's hard to blame them for that though, as even if you do know about this, it takes quite a few tries to get this to work. Now, this issue with the underwater doors normally isn't a huge deal. It even existed in Ruby and Sapphire. However, there weren't any locations where you could actually do anything with this. When you resurface on a door tile, you still return to Hoenn's Ocean. You just end up back in the wide open area, still able to continue the game as normal. However, in the case of this particular cave that only appears in Pokemon Emerald, with a wandering Kyogre on Route 129, it just so happens that the door tile here leads to somewhere that causes a major problem. When the player resurfaces here, they end up just on the other side of the rocks, placing them out of bounds from the intended game map. It is here that the player can potentially become stuck. At a glance, it might not seem like this is the case, but if you try to go north just a little bit, you'll immediately hit an invisible wall. This is because the game simply does not have any map to load in this direction. Since you're never supposed to be on this side of the rocks, the game creates the visual illusion of an endless ocean by repeating the water tiles where the map actually ends. From here, if you were to try and go in any other direction, you'll only hit more rocks, and it will become even more apparent that you're not supposed to ever see what's over here. You're now trapped in this small enclosed space with no way to move back into the normal parts of the map. And this should go without saying, but there is no way to go back underwater here either. The devs, of course, had no reason to put a dive spot in an out-of-bounds area. So with all of that said, the next question is obvious. How do you escape? The first and most simple method is to use a field move such as fly or teleport. This will immediately take you back to a town, letting you continue the game as if nothing happened. The second method of escape is to have your entire party faint against the ocean's wild Pokemon, forcing your character to warp back to the last used Pokemon Center. And this right here is where the potential to ruin the save file lies. If someone were to do this setup without a Pokemon that knows Fly or Teleport, then how long could they become trapped if they had no choice but to rely on the wild encounters to make their team faint? Now in this scenario, if you had a normal team of Pokemon, this task would just be a small chore that you could probably escape from in like 20 minutes. But with the setup I'm about to show you, we're going to do this with a team that will make the escape last longer than an entire playthrough of the game itself. Here is what this would look like. As you can see, after trapping myself in the out-of-bounds area again, I now have a team of 6 level 100 Vaporeon. All of them are shiny, have perfect HP and defensive stats, and know the moves Tackle, Acid Armor, Surf, and Dive, all of which have had their PP completely maxed out. As well, my inventory is as empty as possible, with no items, fishing rods, or TMs. Being completely stuck here, I saved the game, which has now been left in a very unplayable state. If you're familiar with these kinds of videos, then you know what's going to happen next. From here, we need to imagine that this game cartridge has been passed off to someone who has been told to try and escape as fast as possible. If we're going to show how bad this softlock can be, then we need to approach this with that exact mindset. So first of all, in the options menu, we need to turn off the battle animations and set the text speed to fast. From here, I'm going to time the escape, starting from when I hit continue on the main menu, and stopping when I finally blacked out, and return to a Pokemon Center. When the save file is booted up, there is quite literally nothing to do, except surf back and forth on the water, waiting for Pokemon to appear. This is where an unsuspecting player is going to make a horrifying realization. You see, while the initial plan may have been to let the Vaporeon get knocked out, that isn't going to happen very easily. This is for 2 reasons. The first is because of Vaporeon's status condition. All 6 of them are paralyzed with no way for this to be healed. This means that the wild Tentacool here are unable to poison them. Poison would have been a quick way to deplete their massive HP, but that's now impossible since status conditions cannot normally overwrite a different one. The second reason this escape won't be easy is because of Vaporeon's ability, Water Absorb. When Vaporeon is hit by a water-type attack, it automatically heals up to 25% of its maximum HP, and because we are fighting Pokemon that are in the ocean, that is obviously going to happen very frequently. Because we can't be poisoned and will accidentally heal on almost every encounter, this means that the only reliable way to deplete Vaporeon's HP is to use the recoil damage from Struggle. But in order to use Struggle, we have to use up all of the PP of every one of Vaporeon's moves. In order to do this, we will be forced to sit there, going through encounter after encounter, mashing the A button until all 4 moves hit 0. We also need to keep in mind that when paralysis activates, PP isn't used during that turn, effectively making this task take even longer as a result. As for why the 6 Vaporeon are shiny, this is just because the sparkle animation adds an extra second on every encounter. Even with battle animations turned off, this one will always still play, and it adds up over a long period of time. And if you've not seen some of my previous videos, then you're probably wondering why all of them have a long name of just A's. The reason for that is because it takes the game slightly longer to display the text for longer names in battle compared to short names. This normally isn't a big deal, but again, after a while, that time starts to add up, forcing the escape to take even longer. Even when we do get the Vaporeon to use Struggle, there are still a few extra things that the player will have to do just to drag this out even longer. Being paralyzed, Vaporeon's speed is cut, meaning that most of the wild Pokemon here will outspeed it and attack first. In order to prevent yourself from getting hit by a water move and accidentally healing, you'll have to start saving between encounters. If you get hit by one, you'll just have to reset, costing you even more time. You might think that you could have done this from the beginning, but trust me, this would take even longer overall without Struggle's recoil damage being a possibility. now that I've explained all of that, it's finally time to answer the big question. How long would it take for someone to escape this situation? If you'd like to make a guess, feel free to pause the video and post one in the comments. There are many variables to consider here, as encounters, the wild Pokemon's attacks, and paralysis turns are going to be random during the whole process. Different attempts will inevitably end up with slightly different times, due to all the instances of RNG that come up. However, after sitting down and going through all of this painstaking process myself, I can give you all a real time to consider. From the moment I hit continue to the moment I was transported back to a Pokemon Center, this escape took a total of 7 hours, 47 minutes, and 39 seconds. That is an incredibly long time to have to spend stranded in the ocean, fighting weak wild Pokemon. And with that, I've pretty much covered what I wanted to talk about for this video. I set out to see if I could create a softlock situation in the middle of the ocean, and this was the result. Because wild encounters still happen in this sealed area, you can't make this 100% impossible to escape, but by creating a team that makes the escape take nearly 8 hours, we've created something almost as bad, if not worse. If you're familiar at all with Pokemon Emerald, then you should be well aware that many players could easily beat the entire game in that amount of time. In fact, speedrunners could do it twice and still have plenty of time to spare. Being stuck like this for that long is so bad that you might as well just start a new game without even bothering to try. Hope you all enjoyed this little video. My name is Picasbury, and thanks for watching.